94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, vous pouvez nous écouter sur la 94-90 FM à Dakar, via le net sur les www.wadr.org. WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Cotonou. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa, the Macross Radio 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. First, our headline stories. A South African court decides the fate of Beninese activist Kemi Seba today over illegal migration. Health experts hold emergency talks on Ebola outbreak as President Mahama calls for stronger healthcare fund in Africa.
We're advocating the practical capacity of a nation to finance its own core functions, produce its own medicines, and govern its own data.
Togo grants a 30-day visa-free entry to African nationals. And Nigerian police rescue 30 millions from trafficking network as Gambia saves over 100 migrants in the North Bank region. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Jibril Janko.
Thank you for joining our broadcast. Newslink kicks off in South Africa, where the Pretoria Regional Court will rule in the case of Beninese activist Kemi Seba today, Tuesday, May 19, 2026. The previous hearing on Monday 11, which was meant to address his bail request, was postponed, leaving his fate uncertain. The Pan-African activist is facing prosecution for attempting illegal immigration to Europe, while the Beninese authorities have charged him with advocating terrorism. Augustine Colley gives the details.
Today's hearing by the Pretoria Regional Court could be decisive. Either Kemi Seba obtains bail or he remains in prolonged detention in a case where justice, politics and diplomacy intersect. Arrested on April 14th in South Africa, the president of the Pan-Africanist Emergencies Organization has been prosecuted for attempting illegal immigration and for allegedly preparing attacks in Europe. However, Kemi and his lawyers have rejected the accusations. In a letter published on May 7, he admitted to having considered leaving the country clandestinely after his visa expired while denying an involvement in terrorist activities. Meanwhile, Benin's authorities have issued 2 international arrest warrants against him for money laundering and advocating terrorism in connection with his open support for the failed coup attempt on December 7, 2025. It is also important to mention that the Pan-African activist, through his advisors, has requested asylum in South Africa.
Augustine Colley filed that report. Elsewhere, in Togo, the government is taking a significant step in its African integration policy. Citizens of other African countries can now enter and reside in Togo for up to 30 days without a visa. The measure aims to promote free movement and encourage inter-African trade. Imo Ede tells the details.
This is a major reform in terms of mobility on the continent. In a statement released Monday evening by the Minister of Security, the Togolese government announced that all African citizens holding a valid national passport are now exempted from visa requirements to enter Togo. This decision effectively immediately is part of the integration vision championed by the authorities, particularly to strengthen economic exchanges and cooperation between African states. It follows an announcement by the President of the Council, Farin Atingbe, at the 3rd edition of the Biashara Africa 2026 Forum, dedicated to accelerating the continent's economic integration. According to the press release, the visa exemption is valid for a maximum of 30 days. However, travelers remain subject to current security, immigration, and public health requirements. Authorities also remind travelers that prior registration on the government immigration platform remains mandatory at least 24 hours before arrival in order to obtain a travel document.
Imo Edet reporting. Authorities in the Gambia say 117 migrants have been rescued after a vessel became stranded near Sami Island in the North Bank region of the country. The operation was carried out by personnel of the anti-crime unit sub-base in Barra following intelligence reports about the distressed boat. The Gambia Police Force says several items linked to the journey were also recovered from the scene. WDR's Sangdonal Mendu reports.
A major rescue operation unfolded on Sunday at Sami Island in the North Bank region after security forces intercepted a stranded migrant vessel carrying more than 100 people. Police from the anti-crime unit based in Barra rushed to the scene and rescued 117 migrants of different nationalities from the distressed boat, bringing all passengers safely ashore. The incident once again highlights the dangers of irregular migration routes across West Africa and the Atlantic, where many young people continue to risk deadly sea crossing in search of better opportunities abroad. Despite ongoing awareness campaigns, the toll remains heavy. In 2025 alone, 893 Gambian migrants were confirmed dead, most of them at sea, while dozens of boats went missing. The previous year recorded even higher fatalities, with more than 1,600 deaths, including over 1,500 at sea. Security authorities say the latest rescue underscores continued efforts to combat irregular migration and prevent further loss of life. The Gambia Police Force has reaffirmed its commitment to protecting lives and strengthening measures against dangerous migration routes. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Sangdona Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Police Force says it has rescued 30 million nationals who were allegedly held under exploitative conditions by a human trafficking network in Nasarawa State. In a statement, the Police Force Relations Officer Anthony Placid states that during recent operations, the police uncovered the network's activities in residential buildings located in Mararaba and Karu communities. Authorities confirmed the arrest of 13 suspects connected to the syndicate, including the alleged ringleader Abdul Nkaki. According to the police, investigations began after receiving intelligence about suspicious disappearances of several foreign nationals in Nigeria. Preliminary findings indicate that the suspects lured vulnerable youths from other countries such as Mali and Gabon with the promises of jobs in Nigeria and opportunities to travel to Europe. The victims were reportedly required to pay processing and transportation fees before being taken to locations in Mararaba and Karu, where they were held under restrictive and exploitative conditions.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's now focus on the current public health emergencies declared by the World Health Organization following an Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. On Monday, the WHO and global health stakeholders held an emergency meeting as part of efforts to strengthen these response mechanisms. The UN agency maintains that it is seeking to prevent any further spread of the disease, as there is currently no vaccine available for this new strain of Ebola, which is considered more contagious and more deadly. Francis Boniface reports.
Monday's coordination meeting to effectively manage the renewed Ebola outbreak in DRC had health experts from the World Health Organization, African Ministries of Health, the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and several United Nations agencies in attendance. The talks come as the virus continues to spread rapidly, with new cases now reported in Uganda and Sudan within a week. To contain the outbreak, the WHO says it is deploying additional technical experts to support frontline response teams in affected areas. The mission will focus on improving clinical care, infection prevention, disease surveillance, laboratory capacity, and community awareness campaigns. Meanwhile, Doctors Without Borders will assist with patient isolation and infection control measures, while the World Food Programme is expected to coordinate airlift operations to rapidly deliver emergency medical supplies and equipment to affected communities. The International Organization for Migration will support border surveillance efforts as concerns grow over cross-border transmission of the virus. WHO also plans to reposition strategic medical stockpiles in high-risk countries, while affected nations and neighboring states will receive additional support to strengthen emergency coordination, border monitoring, and the training of healthcare workers in a bid to curb the spread of the epidemic.
Francis Boniface filed that report. At the regional level, the Sierra Leonean health authorities say they are intensifying surveillance and public health preparedness measures in collaboration with West African countries as new Ebola outbreak is reported in Central Africa. Additionally, the government is deploying advanced misinformation tackling systems developed from lessons learned during the country's 2014 devastating Ebola crisis. Harold Thomas, Risk Communication and Community Engagement Lead at the Sierra Leonean Health Ministry, says that the country's social listening tool is on the verge of being rolled out to other West African countries.
We now have what we call BIIM, that is Behavioral Intelligence and Infodemic Management. And we are using social scientific means in making sure that we gauge perceptions of people, we track those rumors in time, and then we counter these rumors and we debunk them, and then we address people's concern. Once we are doing this, we find out that the rumors, the misconceptions, and misinformation actually go down. Where it's again at a point wherein our systems that we are using inside our social listening tool is on the verge of being rolled out to other countries in West Africa so that we have interoperable systems. And not even for the Ebola, but we are also taking into consideration the imminent threat for antivirus as well. And that's when also we are putting out messages. And then the basic things like the hand hygiene is being reinforced. And then we make sure that we encourage people to look out for updates.
That was Harold Thomas, the Risk Communication and Community Engagement Lead for the Ministry of Health in Sierra Leone. Well, more on health matters, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has called for stronger African health sovereignty, stressing the need for the continent to take greater control of its healthcare systems and for the health responses. Speaking at the meeting in Geneva, President Mahama emphasized the importance of African countries working together to build resilient health systems and reduce dependency on external support. He said Africa must be better prepared to address emergent health challenges through stronger leadership, cooperation and investment in the sector.
We come to build a future where a country's health is not a byproduct of charity, but a result of sovereign capability. This desire to take our health destinies into our hands imposes important responsibility on us as African leaders. We must see health spending as an investment rather than just a social obligation, because a healthy population is indispensable to economic progress. Sovereignty is the practical capacity to finance core functions predictably, regulate quality at the regional level, and produce critical inputs locally. A continent that manufactures less than 1% of its vaccines while carrying 25% of global disease burden is not sovereign, it is vulnerable. And by sovereignty, we do not mean isolationism. We're advocating the practical capacity of a nation to finance its own core functions, regulate its own quality, produce its own medicines, and govern its own data.
That was Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama. Now to politics, reactions are emerging in Côte d'Ivoire following a major announcement by opposition leader Laurent Gbagbo on the future direction of his party, the PPACI. Over the weekend, the former Ivorian leader said he plans to delegate more responsibilities within the party and expand the roles of young people and women in its leadership structure. The move is being welcomed by supporters as an effort to prepare a new generation of political leaders. However, some analysts argue it could allow Gbagbo to maintain influence over the party as internal restructuring continues. Our correspondent in Abidjan, Marcel Alistemblay, filed this report presented by Christopher Aticho.
Just days before his 81st birthday, Laurent Gbagbo appears to be turning his attention to the future of the PPACI, the opposition party he leads. Over the weekend, Gbagbo announced plans to delegate some of his powers within the party. He says he wants young people and women to play a bigger role in the party's political leadership and decision-making. The announcement has generated mixed reactions within the political circles in Côte d'Ivoire. Some young party supporters have welcomed the move. They see it as an opportunity for a new generation to gradually emerge within the party's leadership structure. But political analyst and journalist Sidiki Traore believes the move is also strategic. According to him, the former president may still be seeking to retain strong influence over the decision of the party, despite delegating responsibilities. The latest development comes amid broader internal changes within the PPACI. Recently, several party officials were expelled. A new leadership team is also expected to be announced in the coming days.
A report by WDR's master analyst in Play in Abidjan, voiced by Christopher Aticho. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa, the Macross Radio 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. A South African court decides the fate of Beninese activist Kemi Seba today over illegal migration. Health experts hold emergency talks on Ebola outbreak as President Mahama calls for stronger healthcare funding in Africa. Togo grants a 30-day visa-free entry to African nationals. And Nigerian police rescue 30 Malians from trafficking network as Gambia saves over 100 migrants in the North Bank region. Still ahead in the news, we have press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
26 auditors general from across Africa have gathered in Monrovia for the annual governing body meeting of the African Organization of English-Speaking Supreme Audit Institutions. The high-level conference, hosted by Liberia's General Auditing Commission, is the first time Liberia has hosted the regional gathering since 2005, when the organization was founded. The conference began yesterday, May 18, and runs until May 22, 2026, bringing together 26 countries. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Packer reports.
The meeting is expected to deepen cooperation among African Supreme Audit institutions and to strengthen efforts to improve transparency and accountability in the management of public resources across the continent. According to Head of Communication at Liberia's General Auditing Commission, Edwin Clark, the conference opened with a 2-day closed-door governing board meeting ahead of the official sessions.
A new dimension in the process of conducting audit is the audit diagnosis. These are some of the steps Auditor General will be discussing to see how best they can transition from the manual perspective to the digital perspective in conducting. So on the AfroSAE program, they have 2 strategic topics that they discuss, which is the governing board meeting.
He says a 2-day strategic review meeting involving all 26 auditors will begin on Wednesday at the ministerial complex. At the end of the gathering, delegates are expected to adopt resolutions linked to AfroSAE's 2025 to 2029 strategic plan, while also reaffirming commitments to stronger audit independence, good governance, and improved public finance oversight in line with the African Union Agenda 2063 framework. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, let's remain with Abraham Parker for the press review in Liberia.
This edition of Press Review features 3 local dailies. We begin with front-page Africa News paper with these stories. Justice in limbo. Supreme Court's state order on capital trial remains pending months after Kofa's petition. That's according to front-page Africa News paper. The last story here says, mixed opinions. Concern mounts as House of Representatives fails to notify National Elections Commission over vacant seat following Representative Koluba's expulsion. Our next stop is Heritage newspaper with these stories. Liberia, Morocco see major security parked. General Auditing Commission audit exposes major RRA rule scandal. Our next in list is the New Republican newspaper with these stories. Jurors, others summoned as towards Equator fallout heatings. That's according to the New Republic newspaper. PAL seeks a stronger media partnership to advance Africa-led agenda, and Liberia Telecommunication Authority chairman pushes controversial telecom contract shift. Senior officials reportedly uneasy over move to replace Thai with new company. That's according to the New Republic newspaper. That does it for this Tuesday's edition of Press Review from Liberia's capital, Monrovia.
Abraham Parker with the press review there from Monrovia.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In our guest interview segment, we focus on Sierra Leone's Ebola preparedness efforts following reports of an Ebola outbreak in Central Africa. Recall that Sierra Leone was one of the West African countries hardest hit during the previous Ebola outbreak. Health authorities say the country is now strengthening surveillance, border screening and emergency response systems to prevent any possible spread of the virus. Harold Thomas is the risk communication and community engagement lead at Sierra Leone's Ministry of Health.
A lot of gains have been made and a lot of capacity has been built. So the Ministry of Health 10 years ago is different from what it is right now. We also have an outfit now, the National Public Health Agency, that is specifically there for emergencies and conditions of public health importance. We now have a lot of epidemiologists, we have trained laboratory scientists, and all the core capacities are up and ready to a point that we are also supporting other countries.
What specific weaknesses exposed during the last Ebola outbreak has Sierra Leone prioritized fixing in its current preparedness strategy?
All the core capacities, surveillance and epidemiology, laboratory, medical countermeasures, points of entries, risk communication, even the overall emergency preparedness and response. If you go back and check, the JEE, the Joint External Evaluation by WHO, you will see the scores for Sierra Leone. A lot of significant improvement has been made. Since Ebola, we have fought a lot of diseases like COVID-19, even Mpox.
Would you say that there are concerns about surveillance gaps at unofficial border crossings, particularly with regional population movements remaining high in the region?
Fortunately for us in Sierra Leone, we only have two borders. The border between Sierra Leone and Liberia and the border between Sierra Leone and Guinea. The third border, I would say, is just the sea, the Atlantic Ocean. We have put in place strong cross-border surveillance and we are doing cross-border interactions within myself and my colleagues in Liberia and Guinea, and even Ivory Coast as well, because although we do not have a physical border with Côte d'Ivoire, there is an imaginary border, and we are all part of the Mano River Union. We are making sure that there is strong collaboration. The Public Health Emergency Operations Center is being activated at heightened readiness at alert level 2, and my national emergency health committees have convened and we have activated all it takes for preparedness at this stage. And the airport we have in Sierra Leone, we have activated enhanced screening at that airport, and even our sea harbor. We are actually putting in place all countermeasures so that we would make sure that we are not caught unprepared. And we have also put on standby a rapid response team. In all of our 16 districts, infection prevention protocols are actually reinforced at all our key facilities. And we are in contact with DRC, Uganda, Guinea, because we all have a counterpart there. So we are getting live updates because In fact, updates that I had when this thing started was directly for the Africa CDC. We are getting alerts on a daily basis. And we also have our toll-free line, which is actually popular in Sierra Leone.
One major lesson from the previous outbreak was the danger posed by misinformation. How is the ministry addressing public communication differently this time?
We now have what we call BIIM, that is Behavioral Intelligence and Infodemic Management. And we are using social scientific means in making sure that we gauge perceptions of people, we track those rumors in time, and then we counter these rumors and we debunk them, and then we address people's concern.
That was Harold Thomas, risk communication and community engagement lead at Sierra Leone's Ministry of Health. In sports, attention turns to Rabat this Tuesday as Cote d'Ivoire face Uganda in a crucial Group B clash at the Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations. The Young Elephants top the group with 2 wins and need only a draw to secure first place and a spot in the quarterfinals. Uganda, meanwhile, sit third with 3 points and must avoid defeat to keep their qualification hopes alive. The match kicks off at 4 p.m. GMT at the Mohammed VI complex in Rabat, Morocco. And in Europe, Arsenal move a step closer to the Premier League title with a narrow 1-0 victory over Burnley at Emirates Stadium on Monday night. Kai Havertz scored the only goal of the match, although the Arsenal forward was fortunate to avoid the red card following a strong second half challenge. The result means Arsenal could secure their first league title since 2004 if Manchester City failed to beat Bournemouth on Tuesday tonight. However, the Gunners may still need a final day victory over Crystal Palace to guarantee the title race does not go down on the wire. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink and West Africa Democracy Radio Broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maud Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram and Facebook at WADR English. I am Sankula Jibril Janko. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Graft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.